Joining us now, Sheriff David Clarke. Sheriff Clarke, great to have you.
Thanks a lot, John. Great to be on with you.
Let me get your thoughts on these states that are getting rid of qualified immunity. Our caller Brandon just brought it up. It's going to pass the House in Virginia. A lot of people have been talking about this nationally. You were in law enforcement your whole life. If qualified immunity gets stripped out, what happens?
Well, I'm a little confused about this because when a law enforcement officer is involved in a situation and somebody wants to sue civilly, what people want to go after is the deep pockets, and that's not the cop. Most cops don't have a lot of wealth anyway. That's why they sue the municipality and you sue the police department. They're the ones with the deep pockets. So people don't go after the cop anyway. They might name him in there or her in there, but then at the same time, once the suit starts, the corporation counsel representing the city or the town or whatever asks that the police officer be taken out of the suit because of qualified immunity. But the people who are suing, they don't want to go after the cop anyway. So I don't know why they're making a big deal about this other than just, it's a lot of kabuki theater. Hey, let's do something to the cops. Hey, let's take away qualified immunity. I would say this. Okay, I'll tell you what. Next time you want to sue, you got a choice. You sue the city or the cop, but you can't do both. And I'll tell you what, they'll never want to sue the cop because, like I said, they don't have a lot of wealth anyway.
All right. Well, look, let's get to this violence now going on, Sheriff, in Kenosha. I know you got very animated about this a week ago, and your video with us got a lot of action on that in a lot of different quarters. But the president goes there yesterday. He says he's going to provide $1 million to Kenosha law enforcement. I'm going to play that cut here. Let's get to cut 3, Kara, and get the sheriff's reaction to this President Trump cut 3.
So I'm committed to helping Kenosha rebuild. We all are. We will provide $1 million to the Kenosha law enforcement so that you have some extra money to go out and do what you have to do. You took it was a rough week, to put it mildly, and you've done it incredibly well. I'm also providing nearly $4 million to support these small businesses that I talked about today that got burned down. And we're going to be providing over $42 million to support public safety statewide, including direct support for law enforcement and funding for additional prosecutors to punish criminals and resources to provide services to victims of crime. And that was
reaction, Sheriff Clarke.
Well, it's a good start. I thought it was a fantastic move for the president to visit Kenosha. I know the governor wanted to play politics. The Democrat governor, Tony Evers, sent him a letter and said he didn't want him to come. That's ridiculous. It's customary for a president to visit an area that's been hit by a disaster, whether it be a man-made disaster or a natural disaster. And what people in Kenosha, the good law-abiding people of Kenosha need right now is they need some empathy. And that's what the president did. He went there and he visited the area. He talked to the businesses. He talked to the law enforcement officers who got the thing under control. And it helps at a time like that emotionally for those people. Evers said that they're trying to heal in Kenosha and the president would be a disruption. No, he wouldn't. And he knew he was playing politics. Look, the people of Kenosha, they're good, law-abiding people. They're not ready to heal right now. That'll come later. They're angry. They're angry about what happened, that these outsiders came in and burned their town down, destroyed their businesses, destroyed their lives, and then the people from out of town just pick up and leave and move on to the next city. So for the president to go, and John, here's the thing, too. Unless you go visit these areas that have been destroyed, you really don't have any idea. You think you're doing it doesn't do it justice watching it on TV. You have to go see it for yourself. And when you do, you come away, you're shocked at the devastation that occurred. And so that's why, I was proud that the president pushed Tony Evers out of the way and did what he should have done. And had he not had the president canceled, I'll tell you right now, the Democrats would turn around and say, see, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't have time for us. So it's a pick your poison thing. The president did the right thing.
All right, here's Kenosha Sheriff David Beth, and I know you were talking about him last week. Let's get to cut 7, Kara. Here's Kenosha Sheriff David Beth saying that President Trump yesterday said he'd give him whatever he needs. David Beth, cut 7.
The National Guard started coming on Monday night and started helping us, and their numbers kept growing. And we called Brian on Tuesday morning early, the leaders of Kenosha, and we said, we'll take help from whoever will send it our way. We want to protect the people of Kenosha, the city of Kenosha, the county of Kenosha. We want to protect it. And Brian said, I'm going to make a phone call. And a short time later, we knew that the resources of the United States, of the federal government, and of the president were on its way. And we knew that it took a little discussion between state and federal levels, but we're very thankful that it worked out because, as I said, I didn't care who I got help from. I wanted resources here, and after it was approved, and I got the word that the president said, whatever you need, it's coming. And I had some very, very important people from Washington tell me, I have to report to the president, Mr. Barr, and tell him, what does the sheriff want? And the resources just kept coming. The people kept coming.
Sheriff David Beth, you know him, right? Because you were sheriff in Milwaukee,
Sure.
So you work with him. He was pretty impressed with what the president did. What say you, Sheriff Clarke?
Yeah, this is the way it's supposed to work. You know, I go back to when I had to handle counter riot operations in 2016, and I called the governor. The state law in Wisconsin, only the sheriff of a county or a mayor of a city over 500,000 can request the National Guard from the governor. And I called the governor, and it went just like that. He didn't tell me, the governor Walker at the time didn't tell me how many he would send. He said, tell me how many you need. Tell me what you need. That's the way this is supposed to happen. He mentioned Beth there, mentioned Brian. That would be Congressman Brian Stiles, who he talked to. And while the governor was turning away help, when the president told Tony Evers, the governor, hey, I'll send you anything you need. I'll send you the National Guard. What else do you need? And the governor turned him down, for heaven's sakes. The city's under siege. The city's burning. It's being torn apart by riots. And Governor Evers is playing politics, and he said, we don't need your help. I mean, for heaven's sakes, Tony Evers didn't even visit right away. And he sent a paltry sum of National Guardsmen. He sent 125. He told Beth what he was sending. No. It's the other way around. What do you need? How many do you need? It's the job of a governor, a mayor, county executive in those instances to provide the resources. Sheriff, chief, tell me what you need and I'll get it for you. That's their job, is to provide resources. Their job is not to run the event, the operations. Their job is not to get in the way. It's to get resources, and Evers failed miserably. So fortunately, the congressman in that area, Brian Stiles, had the wherewithal to understand the urgency of it and put things into work. Probably could have saved more property damage and lives and injuries had the governor acted sooner, acted with a sense of urgency. But he failed to understand the seriousness of it. This guy is in over his head. He's a first-term governor. He was the head of the Department of Public Instruction, for heaven's sakes, before he became governor. And, now the state is paying for it. But, elections have consequences. You guys in Virginia, you have your issues, too, with Northam and others. And that's why it's imperative, very important this fall, this November, for people to get out and vote and realize if you're being run by Democrats, your state right now is circling the drain and on the road to destruction.
You look at this stuff, but you're right. You have to go there. That's why I always tell the Richmond story where I go every day, and you look at the city's burned down, and you just look at the destruction there. You have to see it. You really can't describe it on the radio, and seeing it on TV is surreal. When you walk through it, it's quite different. Sheriff David Clarke with us, America's Sheriff. You can go to his website, americasheriff.com. And you can also follow him on Parler. He's off Twitter. Good for you. I need to get with the program and do that, Sheriff Clarke. Hey, let's get to Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old that shot two black protesters dead, maimed. One other one shot his shoulder off. Guy's in pretty bad shape. My position has been, you're 17, you've got a long gun. Why are you there at night? I'm still trying to figure that one out. But a lot of people now saying that, looking at the tapes, that he fired in self-defense and that he's got a pretty good track record. He was a lifeguard. He was there earlier in was trying to scrub off graffiti. But he was also 17, and I'm kind of perplexed as to how you're 17, you end up with a long gun in that situation. What is your assessment of that, Sheriff Clarke?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there, too. The legal system will sort it out. It's a legal question as to whether he fired in self-defense. We saw some video, but the video doesn't always tell the entire story. You could see he was under attack, feared for his life, and all the mayhem and chaos of the moment. The issue about, why he had the semi-automatic rifle, so on and so forth, I don't know. That he'll have to answer for. But, the thing is, authority vanished. Authority vanishes in a riot. And what I mean by that is the government is incapable, or the government is unwilling to uphold the law and to maintain law and order. When that happens, when authority vanishes, the individual becomes their own authority out of necessity, because nobody else, meaning the government, the police, will act as the authority. And that's why these things happen during a riot. And you can't blame people. I don't, anyway. You can do whatever you want, John, but just figuratively speaking, you can't blame people in the absence of authority to take the law into their own hands. They become their own law. And that's why it's a dangerous situation for police in these riot-torn cities to stand down, because if they're not going to enforce the law, somebody is going to enforce the law. They'll enforce their own law. And we got away from that a long time ago in this country with the development of states and police departments, where we as a society decided that we'd let the government do that for us. It used to be every man for himself in the beginning of this country. In other words, someone stole your horse, you could go out and kill him. But then we got away from that and said, we're going to let the state do it so we can do this in a more consistent and orderly fashion. But right now, in these more riot-torn cities, the police aren't fulfilling their obligation to maintain law and order. So that's, kind of what happens. It gets real messy when the individual becomes their own authority. You get laws, you get, safety enforced inconsistently, things like that. So I put some of this on law enforcement and on the municipality and on the state, that if they're not going to do it, the people are going to do it themselves.
But I mean, I agree with you. It goes back to the fact that law enforcement is incapable, or they're told to stand down, or there's not enough of them in carrying out in carrying out basic protection. And look, I experienced it coming out of the White House. I told the story multiple times now. After the speech by President Trump the last night of the convention, I got out of there at 11 p.m. I got home at 2 a.m. Took me 3 hours, and several blocks, a couple miles away. You couldn't get out of there, but there were no police. So, I mean, if you're confronted, what do? You can't call anybody because they're not there. They've been told to stand down. So you have no protection. So what can you do but take matters into your own hands? What choice do you have?
Not
That's
many.
the problem.
And that's why people need to think of it ahead of time. Have a plan. What would you do in this situation? I can't tell people what to do. I know what I would do. Survival is everybody wants to survive. It's the first law of nature. People want to survive, right? Self-defense is a God-given right. You have the right to defend yourself, and you don't have to react all the time. You can preempt, but it's got to be reasonable. And you're going to have to explain afterwards, like this 17-year-old in Kenosha, who's from Illinois, but he's going to have to explain what he did or why he did what he did, and that's okay. Cops have to do it too, and cops use force. They got to explain why they did, and all the law requires is the most important question: was it reasonable under the circumstances? You're surrounded by a mob. I'll tell you what, you got a good chance of being beaten to death. We've seen it. This isn't something that's made up that people just, make it up. Well, I might get beaten to death. We've seen it happen in these riots. And so, you're surrounded by these individuals. You want to survive. And you're going to use the tools that you have at the time. You're going to have to use those to help survive it. So if you have a gun, you might want to use that. If you have a club, you might want to use it. But think about it now. Have a plan and be able to articulate it, because I'll tell you what, when the crap hits the fan, it goes down real fast.
Oh, you got that right. I mean, I experienced it myself. Thinking about myself, as people were approaching me, what was around. I mean, you have to do that, right? I mean, I'm looking around, is there a stick? What do you do, right? I'm just trying to get out of there. But it becomes a very dangerous situation. And like you said, as far as Rittenhouse is concerned, the young man, the justice system will figure that out. And seems like he's claiming defense. My problem with the whole thing is he shouldn't have been there. When you're 17 years old, you just shouldn't have been there with a gun coming 2 hours away. To me, that didn't make any sense. But that is not part of what the trial is. And it seemed that, or it seems from my perspective, watching the video, like not a lawyer, a layman, it seems like they have a reasonable claim to self-defense. But in the meantime, 2 people are dead, 1 is maimed. That's all bad. It's all bad. But Sheriff, you're right. Had the police been there, none of this would have happened. I think that's what you're saying, basically, right?
Correct.
All right. John Fredericks Radio Network.